Stop blaming everything except the problem. The hardest person you will ever have to confront is not your enemy. It is the person looking back at you in the mirror today. You will discover why blaming everything around you keeps you trapped, and why facing the real problem can become the beginning of your greatest transformation. Before you continue, ask yourself one uncomfortable question. Am I trying to change my life, or am I only trying to explain why it has not changed? The first step toward changing your life is learning to face the real problem instead of spending your energy fighting everything around it. Many people remain stuck, not because they lack ability, intelligence, or opportunity, but because they keep directing their attention toward the wrong things. They spend years explaining why they cannot move forward instead of honestly examining what is holding them back. Blaming others, circumstances, or the world can sometimes feel like relief. It gives the mind a temporary escape from responsibility. It allows a person to say, the reason I am not where I want to be is because of something outside my control. And while there are situations in life that truly are unfair, there comes a point where a person must decide whether they want to remain a victim of their circumstances or become the creator of their future. The problem is not that challenges exist. Challenges are part of every person's journey. The problem is when we allow those challenges to become excuses that stop us from growing. A person cannot solve a problem they refuse to identify. Imagine someone who has a leak in their home, but spends all their time blaming the weather. They complain about the rain, the clouds, and the storm, but they never repair the hole in the roof. The rain is real, but the real solution begins when they address the actual weakness. Life works the same way. Sometimes the storm is not the main problem. Sometimes the problem is the part of ourselves we have neglected. Maybe the issue is a lack of discipline. Maybe it is a habit of procrastination. Maybe it is fear of failure. Maybe it is the unwillingness to learn, adapt, or change. The difficult truth is that many people are searching for answers everywhere except the place where their greatest power exists, themselves. This does not mean blaming yourself for every difficulty. It means recognizing your ability to influence your future. You may not control everything that happens, but you always have some control over how you respond. That is where personal power begins. A person who always blames others gives away their ability to improve. If every problem is someone else's fault, then the solution is always outside their reach. They become dependent on the world changing before they can change. But the person who accepts responsibility thinks differently. They ask, what can I learn from this? What can I do differently? What part of this situation can I improve? These questions create movement. Growth begins when excuses end. The most successful people are not people who never experience problems. They are people who refuse to let problems become permanent identities. They understand that every challenge contains a lesson. A mistake can teach wisdom. A failure can reveal weakness. A difficult season can build strength, but only if you are willing to look honestly at what happened. Many people repeat the same patterns because they never stop to examine them. They blame their results, but continue the same actions that created those results. They want financial improvement, but refuse to change their habits. They want better relationships, but refuse to change their communication. They want confidence, but refuse to step outside their comfort zone. They want a different life while protecting the same behaviors that created the old one. The truth may be uncomfortable, but discomfort is often the doorway to growth. A seed cannot become a tree without breaking through its shell. A person cannot become stronger without facing resistance. Your weaknesses are not meant to be hidden forever. They are meant to be recognized and improved. The moment you identify the real problem, you gain direction. Instead of wasting energy saying, why is this happening to me? You begin asking, what is my next move? That shift changes everything, because your future is not built by your explanations. It is built by your decisions. A person who constantly blames the past remains connected to the past. They keep reliving old situations, old disappointments, and old frustrations. But a person who takes responsibility begins building something new. They understand that yesterday may explain where they are, but it does not have the authority to decide where they will go. Your past can be a lesson, but it should not become a prison. The strongest people are not those who have avoided every hardship. They are those who faced hardship and still chose growth. They looked at their situation honestly. They accepted what they could control. They changed what needed to change. And step by step, they created a new reality. The real problem is often not the obstacle in front of you. The real problem is refusing to face what the obstacle is teaching you. Once you stop running from the truth, you stop being controlled by it. And when you finally have the courage to face the real problem, you discover something powerful. The same person who has the ability to recognize the problem also has the ability to create the solution. Your life begins to change the moment you stop looking for someone to blame and start looking for something to build. The moment a person accepts responsibility for their own life, something powerful begins to happen. They stop seeing themselves as helpless and start recognizing their ability to influence their future. Responsibility is not about carrying the weight of every problem in the world. It is about understanding that your choices, your actions, and your reactions have a direct impact on the direction of your life. Many people spend years waiting for something outside of themselves to change. They wait for people to treat them differently. They wait for opportunities to appear. They wait for circumstances to become easier. They wait for the perfect moment to finally begin. But while they are waiting, time continues moving forward. The person who understands responsibility realizes a simple truth. You cannot always control what happens to you, but you can control what you do next. That is where real power begins. Blame may provide temporary comfort, but responsibility creates long-term transformation. When you blame everything around you, you may feel better for a moment because you have removed yourself from the situation, but the problem remains. The same habits continue. The same patterns repeat. The same results appear. A person who constantly says, "It is not my fault," often becomes trapped in the same circumstances because they never examine what they can improve. But the person who asks, "What can I do about this?" immediately opens a door to change. Responsibility gives you options. It gives you direction. It gives you control. Think about two people facing the same challenge. One person says, "There is nothing I can do. Life is against me." The other says, "This is difficult, but I will find a way forward." The situation may be the same, but their mindset creates two completely different futures. The second person is not stronger because life was easier for them. They become stronger because they refuse to surrender their power. A responsible person does not waste all their energy complaining about what they cannot change. They focus on what they can influence. They can improve their skills. They can change their habits. They can control their attitude. They can choose their response. These decisions may seem small, but they are the foundation of a better life. Every day, you are making choices that shape who you become. The question is whether you are making those choices consciously or simply allowing life to happen around you. A person who takes responsibility becomes intentional. They wake up and understand that their actions matter. They understand that discipline matters. They understand that small decisions repeated over time create big results. A person who wants a better future must eventually accept that their daily behavior is creating that future. If you spend years avoiding responsibility, you also avoid growth. Growth requires honesty. It requires looking at yourself and asking difficult questions. Why am I not progressing? What patterns keep repeating? What habits are damaging my future? What decisions have brought me here? These questions are not meant to attack you. They are meant to awaken you, because awareness is the beginning of change. You cannot improve what you refuse to acknowledge. A person who accepts responsibility does not pretend everything is perfect. They recognize their weaknesses, but they also believe they can improve them. They understand that mistakes are not the end of the story. A mistake becomes valuable when it teaches you something. A failure becomes meaningful when it changes your approach. A difficult experience becomes powerful when it builds your character. The strongest people are not those who never fall. They are those who refuse to stay down. Responsibility is the decision to stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what lesson can I take from this? That question transforms pain into wisdom. It transforms obstacles into opportunities. It transforms problems into growth. A person who takes responsibility also understands that their future depends less on what they have and more on what they do with what they have. Some people have many advantages but waste them because they refuse to take action. Others begin with very little but create incredible results because they take ownership of their choices. The difference is not always talent. The difference is mindset. A responsible person does not wait for someone else to save them. They become active participants in their own life. They stop hoping for change and start creating it. They stop blaming their past and start building their future. They stop focusing on the unfairness of the situation and start focusing on the possibilities within the situation. This does not mean ignoring real difficulties. It means refusing to allow difficulties to become the final definition of your life. You are not just the result of what happened to you. You are also the result of what you choose to do from this point forward. Every day gives you a new opportunity to take back control. One better decision, one stronger habit, one more step forward. That is how lives change, not through excuses, not through blame, through responsibility. Because the person who accepts responsibility discovers something life-changing. The power they were searching for was never outside them. It was always in their own choices. Excuses are one of the most dangerous things a person can carry because they feel like protection while secretly keeping you trapped. An excuse can make a difficult situation feel easier for a moment, but it also removes the urgency to change. When you constantly explain why something cannot happen, you slowly convince yourself that nothing can be done. The greatest danger of excuses is not that they hide the problem from others. It is that they hide the problem from yourself. A person can create an excuse so convincing that they begin believing it. They repeat the same story so many times that it becomes part of their identity. I am not successful because I never had the right chance. I cannot change because this is just who I am. I cannot improve because my past ruined my future. I cannot move forward because other people stopped me. These statements may contain pieces of truth, but when they become permanent beliefs, they become barriers. They stop a person from searching for solutions. Life will always provide reasons to delay. There will always be challenges. There will always be obstacles. There will always be moments when quitting feels easier. But the people who create meaningful lives are not the ones who have no excuses available. They are the ones who refuse to allow excuses to control their decisions. Every excuse protects something. Sometimes it protects fear. A person may say they are waiting for the right time, but deep down they are afraid of failing. Sometimes an excuse protects comfort. A person may say change is impossible, but the truth is they are afraid of leaving familiar habits behind. Sometimes an excuse protects pride. A person may refuse to admit they need to improve because accepting weakness feels painful, but growth requires honesty. You cannot repair what you keep defending. Imagine a person who has a broken vehicle but refuses to check the engine because they do not want to discover the problem. They may continue driving for a while, but eventually the issue becomes impossible to ignore. Life works the same way. The problems we avoid often become stronger. A small weakness ignored today can become a major limitation tomorrow. A small bad habit repeated daily can become a lifestyle. A small fear protected for years can become a prison. This is why self-awareness is so important. You have to be willing to ask yourself, what am I avoiding? What truth am I refusing to accept? What action am I delaying? These questions are uncomfortable because they remove the easy escape, but they also create freedom. The moment you identify the real problem, you gain the ability to change it. Many people want different results while protecting the same excuses. They want better health but refuse to change their routines. They want stronger relationships but refuse to improve their communication. They want success, but refuse to develop discipline. They want confidence, but refuse to face challenges. The problem is not that they are incapable. The problem is that their excuses have become stronger than their goals. Your goals cannot grow in an environment where excuses are constantly being fed. A person must decide which one is more important, the comfort of an excuse or the reward of improvement. Because every time you choose an excuse, you strengthen the habit of avoiding responsibility. And every time you choose action, you strengthen the belief that you are capable. This is how identity changes. You do not become a disciplined person by simply wishing for discipline. You become disciplined by practicing disciplined actions. You do not become confident by waiting to feel confident. You become confident by doing difficult things and proving to yourself that you can handle them. The same way excuses are built through repetition. Strength is built through repetition. One excuse today becomes a pattern tomorrow. One brave decision today becomes a stronger character tomorrow. A person's future is often determined by the conversations they have with themselves. If your inner voice constantly says, "You cannot," "You are not ready," "It is too difficult," then your actions will follow those beliefs. But when you begin saying, "I can learn, I can improve, I can take one step," your behavior begins to change. This does not mean pretending every challenge is easy. It means refusing to surrender before you have truly tried. A person who takes responsibility understands that progress does not require a perfect situation. It requires a willingness to begin. You may not have everything you want. You may not have the support you hope for. You may not have the ideal circumstances, but you still have choices, and those choices matter. The strongest people are not people who never experience setbacks. They are people who stop using setbacks as permanent reasons to stop. They turn obstacles into lessons. They turn failures into information. They turn difficulties into strength. An excuse asks, "Why bother?" A responsible mindset asks, "What is my next step?" That one question can change the direction of a life. Because your future does not depend on eliminating every challenge. It depends on becoming stronger than the challenges you face. Stop protecting the problem with excuses. Stop giving your power away to explanations that keep you stuck. The truth. Accept what needs to change. Take action, because the moment excuses end is the moment real growth begins. Real change begins when a person is willing to look honestly at themselves, not with judgment, not with anger, and not with the intention of finding flaws to criticize, but with the intention of discovering what needs to improve. Self-examination is one of the most powerful tools a person can develop because it allows them to stop living unconsciously and start making deliberate choices. Many people spend their lives analyzing everyone else. They notice other people's mistakes. They point out what others are doing wrong. They explain why someone else is the reason they are unhappy, unsuccessful, or stuck. But they rarely ask the most important question. What role am I playing in my own situation? That question requires courage because it turns attention inward. It is much easier to look outside yourself because external problems feel easier to identify. You can point at circumstances, people, timing, or luck. But when you look within, you begin to see your own patterns, habits, and decisions. And that is where transformation begins. Self-examination is not about blaming yourself for every problem. Life is complex. Unexpected events happen. Other people's choices affect us. Circumstances can create real challenges. But even when you cannot control everything around you, you still have influence over your response. Your response is your power. A person who refuses to examine themselves often repeats the same cycles. They experience the same problems again and again because they never stop to understand what is creating them. They keep making the same decisions. They keep reacting the same way. They keep choosing the same habits. Then they wonder why their results never change. But a different life requires a different approach. The first step is awareness. You cannot change a pattern you do not recognize. A person who wants growth must become a student of their own life. They must observe their thoughts, their behaviors, and their choices. They must ask, what habits are helping me? What habits are hurting me? What actions are moving me forward? What actions are keeping me in the same place? These questions create clarity, and clarity creates change. Many people avoid self-examination because they are afraid of what they might discover. They fear finding weaknesses. They fear admitting mistakes. They fear realizing that they have been standing in their own way. But discovering a weakness is not a defeat. It is an opportunity. A person who discovers a weakness has gained something valuable, awareness. And awareness gives them the chance to improve. The greatest leaders, the strongest individuals, and the most successful people are not people who believe they have nothing to fix. They are people who constantly search for ways to become better. They understand that growth never ends. A person who stops learning begins declining. A person who stops improving begins repeating. Life rewards those who are willing to adapt. One of the most powerful moments in life is when a person stops asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and starts asking, "What is this teaching me?" That shift changes the entire meaning of a challenge. A difficult situation becomes a lesson. A mistake becomes guidance. A failure becomes feedback. Instead of seeing every problem as proof that life is against them, they begin seeing problems as opportunities to become stronger. This mindset separates people who remain stuck from people who continue growing. A person who examines themselves also learns to take ownership of their choices. They understand that every action creates a result. Every habit creates a direction. Every repeated decision shapes their future. The small choices people ignore today often become the major outcomes they experience tomorrow. A person who constantly chooses comfort may eventually lose opportunities. A person who constantly chooses growth may eventually create a completely different life. Your future is not created by one giant moment. It is created by the daily decisions you make when nobody is watching. Self-examination also requires honesty about the stories we tell ourselves. Sometimes the biggest obstacle is not the situation. It is the belief we have about the situation. A person may believe, "I am not capable. I always fail. It is too late for me." But beliefs can be changed. A belief is not a permanent truth. It is a thought repeated enough times that it feels real. When you examine your thoughts, you gain the ability to replace limiting beliefs with empowering ones. Instead of saying, "I cannot change," you begin saying, "I can improve." Instead of saying, "My past controls me," you begin saying, "My choices today shape my future." This is how transformation begins. Not through pretending everything is perfect, not through ignoring problems, but through facing reality with courage. The person who looks within gains something powerful: control. They stop waiting for the world to change before they take action. They start changing themselves. And as they change, their world begins to change with them. A better life is not built by avoiding uncomfortable truths. It is built by facing them. The mirror does not exist to judge you. It exists to show you what you can improve. When you have the courage to examine yourself honestly, you unlock the ability to grow, rebuild, and become the person you were always capable of becoming. Because the greatest change does not begin when everything around you changes. It begins when you decide to change what is within you. If this message challenged you, do not ignore that feeling. Comment *I accept responsibility if you are ready to change. Share this with someone who needs the courage to face reality. Your transformation begins the moment your excuses end.